Hey y'all, it's Rick here with Uncommon Communion, and we have just ended the fourth day of round of 32 knockout games in the World Cup. And as much as Monday was a day of long games, shootouts, upsets, Tuesday, not so much. In fact, I would argue that really it was a lot of how we expected, with maybe one exception. And before we start to talk about what we saw on Tuesday, round of 32, day 4, and look ahead to Wednesday, which it actually is as I'm recording this, let's begin as we always begin here by recognizing, realizing, celebrating, and affirming that we are always and everywhere in the holy presence of the more and each other. So today, Tuesday, 3 games, two of the most significant stars that we have seen in the World Cup. Not the only ones, but two of them did what we expected them to do, which was lead their teams to victory. So the first game, the morning game or early afternoon game from Dallas, was Norway and the Ivory Coast. You might remember 9 of 10 teams from Africa qualified into the knockout round, made it into this round of 32. And so far, 3 of those teams have played, and 2 of them had gone home. So we're 1 for 3 at this point in keeping an eye on which African teams will be advancing, winning a knockout game to the round of 16. So we'll kind of bookmark that because we got another African team coming up tomorrow. Actually, 2 African teams tomorrow, Wednesday. All right, that first game was Ivory Coast, Norway, as I mentioned. Holland, excuse me. Hard to read the backs of those uniforms, those Norwegian rune-like letters and numbers, really quite something. They won, tight game a little bit. I think Ivory Coast actually got the first goal. Norway had to come from behind, but they won it pretty comfortably, 2-1. Harlan got at least 1 goal. I think he assisted on the other. The man is a beast. I mean, in every way possible. I mean, just look at him. He is a monster, a demigod, a Thor-like character, and he can score goals. Norway advances. Second game that we saw today really wasn't much of a game, and I don't think anybody expected it to be. It was France and Sweden. Sweden was super inconsistent in the group stage. Won a game big, lost a game big, and lost it pretty significantly today to France, 3 goals to 0. I believe Mbappe, who is only in his third World Cup and already is the second highest goal scorer in the World Cup, only 1 goal behind Lionel Messi, who's playing in his 6th World Cup. I mean, pretty amazing. Mbappe got 2 goals, not a hat trick. I don't think he's had a hat trick yet. One of his teammates did the other day, but 2 goals out of those 3. France comfortably moves on. The big game that we all were waiting for and actually waited an extra hour for, so I am getting to bed an hour later than I would like, and I got an early morning on Wednesday. The game we were all waiting for delayed because of lightning in Mexico City, and that was Mexico and Ecuador. And had heard a lot about this game ahead of time. Ecuador is this super defensive team. They were going to bunker down. They were going to do a low block, which we'll talk a little bit more here when we talk about the U.S. game. And people just thought Mexico, it could be just a kind of a plodding game, not a lot of excitement. Mexico might sit back and it would just be, people, the 2 teams really being very cautious. Well, the good news was it wasn't that way. Mexico came out of the gates blazing, put a ton of pressure on Ecuador, and eventually got 2 goals. Ecuador had a few chances, but really never were in the game. And then it got really ugly at the end. One of the Ecuadorian players got a red card. It's the second time someone has gotten a red card in this cup for, in a conflict situation, if a player covers his mouth while he's talking to an opposing player, presumably to say something nasty, maybe racist or ugly, to be sure, they get an automatic red card. And that is what happened at the end of the game. It was pretty pathetic. So Ecuador goes home. The most important thing about this Mexico win is that they had a curse in the sense that Mexico, even though they've done really well in the World Cups, and they did really well so far, they won all three of their group games and shut out all three of those teams. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. Apparently, they're the only like the sixth team in World Cup history to win all three of their group games. And it's hard to do. Even big powers like Argentina, who went on to win the last cup in 22, they lost their first game. So that's tough to do, right? Anyway, Mexico to this day, from 1986 to today, had not won a knockout game. They had been able to get to the knockout rounds most of the time, but were taken out before moving past what was then the round of 16. So they exorcised those ghosts, that curse, tonight in Mexico City, and it was really quite something. Even if it wasn't a close game, it was an exciting game because of all the history. And Mexico City is just an amazing place. Stadio Azteca is probably the most significant footballing stadium, soccer stadium in the world. And it's just fun to watch games there. And I think Mexico has another game there as well. So good on them for doing well. All right, let's look ahead to Wednesday, the day that we have all been waiting for. And there are two other games tomorrow. I talked a little bit about them yesterday, but just as a reminder, England and Congo DR, or Dr. Congo, as we like to call him, they come on at noon tomorrow. Belgium and Senegal play at 4, and that's a good game to watch because whoever wins that game will play the winner of the US and Bosnia Herzegovina game. So keep an eye on that to see who potentially the US will play if the US advances. Now, here's the thing, y'all. The US should beat Bosnia. The way the US has been playing, the skill, the speed, the intensity, we are definitely favored, which is pretty remarkable because, well, it hasn't always been that way in World Cups. In fact, hearing about the Bosnian team and some things to kind of consider is this is a scrappy team. In fact, I heard them described kind of like the US team of more recent, or not so recent history, but like the 90s and the 2000s, where we just weren't this team, this gelled powerhouse that we saw in the first two games and really the three games that we've played, but we were just scrappy, playing for just that odd goal to be able to win, digging everything out, not really being a team, a lot of individuals. And that's what we have seen in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm just going to call them Bosnia from this point. Nevertheless, they are likely to come out very tightly defensive. And quick word on that, you're going to hear about things like the low block, parking the bus. Basically, what that means is a team pulls themselves back, puts pretty much every player close to the in the 18 box or in their half of the field, and the goal is to prevent a goal, right? And in a knockout round, again, you're not playing to a tie, you're playing to extra time and then PKs. A team that maybe isn't a scoring powerhouse will drop back, defend, and force a team to break them down through consistency and passes and moving off the ball, all kinds of things. And that's what we're likely to see with Bosnia. They do have a good striker. He is 40 years old, so a little bit long in the tooth. They also have a really good young striker who, interestingly enough, was born in Appleton, Wisconsin. So you're probably going to be hearing about him a lot. But here's the thing, y'all. If the US comes out and plays like they came out and played in the last three games, gets an early goal, maybe gets two early goals, right? That's going to make a huge difference in the game that we're going to see. Because again, a team like Bosnia that wants to be defensive and really play for the tie, play for the shootout, or play for the counterattack. That's another thing a defensive team does. Is they pull themselves back and they look for a fast break. They look for a breakaway. and maybe get a foul or get a free kick, a corner kick, and so forth. So if the U.S. can get a goal or two, especially early, which again is what Mexico did today, it will force Bosnia to be more offensive, because then they can't tie if they're a goal or two down, right? They need to get a goal or a two to equalize. So it'll force them out of their shell, and it will just open up and make for a very different game. So what we want to see and what we're going to look for is the US to come out hitting hard, fast, like we saw, looking for that early goal. And they have gotten that early goal in all three of their games that they have played. So we'll see how that goes tomorrow. Well, the US has to keep the record going and also break a curse of our own. So let's get to the curse first, because we're talking about curses broken today. 10 games, the last 10 games, and I think these are friendly games, so it's not just competitive games. The last 10 times the US has played European opponents, we have not won. Now, I think there were some draws in there, but there were also some beatings in there. And so we've done well against non-European teams. And again, in the group stage, who did we have? We had Paraguay, we had Australia, and Turkey, European-ish. I mean, European, Asian, right? Um, we lost to them. So there is this curse as we play a European team tomorrow. How do we break them down? Can we break this curse? So I think we can. I think we will. And here's the other thing, y'all, and I'll end with this, because this is one of the many things that is making this cup exciting. This is the first time ever the World Cup has been played in 3 countries. And I was actually watching a video today looking ahead to 2030, and that is going to be played in 3 countries also, and on 3 continents, right? That's going to be Portugal, Spain, and Morocco, with a couple of opening games in South America, interestingly enough. So what we've already seen is the 2 other host countries, Canada and Mexico. Canada, first time ever to the round of 16. They've never made it through a knockout game. Mexico hasn't made it through a knockout game in a long time. We talked about that. And the US, we haven't beaten a European team in a while. So we need to keep it up so that the 3 host countries are all in the round of 16. Because here's the thing, y'all, home countries have an advantage. Traditionally, home countries have done well, have punched above their weight. Mexico certainly seems to be doing that. And we want the USMNT to do that as well. All right, y'all. I got to get to bed. I got to get some sleep. Probably get a good nap tomorrow before the big game, and I can't wait. I can't wait. I hope you get out or stay home and watch it. I know I'm hoping to get out to make some memories. I have strong memories of the last time the U.S. played on U.S. soil in a knockout game. I'll tell you about that next time when I record, but I'm hoping to have some strong memories from tomorrow's game as well. So, and positive memories too. Fingers crossed. All right, y'all. Blessing and good. Be bold, be well, hold fast, y'all.